Just,
morning.
yes,
Good morning, everyone. At the request of the chair, I'm serving as chair this morning because of connection issues. He is on with us by phone. This is the Finance Committee meeting, November 27th. I am going to call on members of the committee as I see them on the screen to make sure they can hear and be heard by us. So I'll just call out names. Mandy?
Present.
Tom?
Present.
Matt?
Present.
And Bob?
Present.
And we expect that Alicia will be able to join us, and Matt, we don't think that Andy will be joining us. So
No, I with Andy this morning, and he's got a family emergency. So
okay, so I would like to start the meeting then, and I know Alicia had two areas she wanted to focus on, and I have some comments on the draft as well. So maybe the best way to proceed, and we're working on the draft guidelines, would be to pull up the draft guidelines.
Kathy?
Yes.
Public comment was listed first.
Oh, thank you. I don't have.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay. Great. I don't have the
Okay.
agenda. Thank you very
I'll be
much.
able to join.
All right. So we are open for public comments.
Recording in progress.
Oh, Bob, you just need to disconnect
Yeah,
from
I'm
your
just
phone.
turning my phone off.
And Alicia's here. Let's confirm that she can hear.
Hi, I can hear. Thank you, Athena.
Okay, I am turning over the chairdom back to the chair.
The chair. Thank you, Kathy. Sorry, folks. I couldn't join by Zoom. I had to reboot my computer. That seemed to work. So, I guess we're in public comment. Deb, go ahead.
Hi, good morning. I'm just calling to find out if you can post the recording from the previous FinCom meeting. I haven't been able to find it anywhere.
Hi, Deb. I'll send it to you this morning.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Maria, you can please join us.
Thank you, Maria Kopicki, South Amherst. I'll be really brief. The things that you're about to possibly talk about are incredibly complex and incredibly important, and they require a very thorough analysis of the situation of the library project and indeed the assumptions made in the model and a real analysis of the implications of that and the conclusions. You need to spend this deserves a lot of thought, a lot of analysis, a lot of information and data which you do not have right now, and I hope that you will get that before you make any decisions. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Deb, your hand is still up. Did you have anything else? No. Okay. I think that's everyone. Maria, your hand is still up. Okay. I do not see any other hands. So up one more. Anita, please join us.
Thank you, Bob. I just want to expand a little bit on Maria's comment. I'm focused on your agenda item about consideration of 4 models to build 4 capital projects. The town manager appears to require approval of one of these 4 by mid-December, and I must question, and I hope you will too, the reason for the urgency. Surely waiting even 1 month longer should not jeopardize any of these projects, it appears to be an artificial deadline whose only effect will be to prevent the Finance Committee from conducting a thorough analysis of the models and the components, including the library project. I think even a cursory view of them will demonstrate that all four models are based on faulty assumptions. And I'll mention only one by way of example. They all allocate only $3 million each year for 30 years to address the needs of all other municipal capital projects, properties, and infrastructure. This is unsustainable, and I really hope that you will not bend to the pressure of this artificial deadline, but take the time to analyze the models correctly so that you can make an informed recommendation to the town council. You know, this will affect the town for the next 30 years for an entire generation. This is not an analysis that should be made under pressure. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Kathleen, please join us.
Kathleen, if you're speaking, you're muted and we can't hear you. Kathleen, you need to unmute to make your comment, please.
Kathleen, you're still muted. I will reopen the public comment for you at the end of the session. I do want your opinion to be heard, but we can't hear you right now, and we are under some time pressure. So I will get back to you before we adjourn the meeting. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to close public comment, except for Kathleen, who we could not hear her. So why don't we move on to the next item, which is the budget guidelines. Athena, do you want to put the draft up? While
yes,
Athena is doing that, I think I spoke with Andy Steinberg this morning, and he had some comments he wanted to make sure everyone heard. I think one of the things that we need to add in, well, first of all, he wasn't sure that the executive summary is really going to be that helpful, because the executive summary, if it all it does is summarize options or recommendations without some of the caveats around them, we don't want the members of the public and members of the council to just read the executive summary and not see the rest of the depth of discussion. So we may want to revisit the executive summary to see if it really is helpful or not. But for all segments of the budget, here's what Andy said, and I agree with all of these. For all segments of the budget, what we need to have a projection of long-range costs and how that they will fit within the revenue growth that we have. I think that's particularly important for the schools, but we don't want to single out the schools only to say this, but I think all of our financial guidelines need to be based on the fact that the schools, the regional school, the elementary school, the library, and the town can all live within the revenue growth that we have every year. So I think that should be an important part of these guidelines, is that what we need is for each of these segments to provide us with information provide the council with information that shows how they're going to do this. The $3 million for capital costs in the out years may need to be adjusted to account for costs that are not anticipated. So we need to put something in there that provides for amending that to to make sure that we don't fall behind again in our capital, our attending to our capital needs. One thing that's not in the guidelines now that should go in would be to support incentives to support the town manager's goals. In other words, provide incentive. We need to put that the financial guidelines should support the town manager's goals. There's also there's a document, financial objectives and policies, that was developed, and where we talk about the 5% in cash reserves and the 10% in general stabilization. That is part of those objectives and policies, and so we should mention that, not just that, but we should be consistent with all of those. And in terms of the library funding, I think we should not really talk about that in the guidelines. I don't know that it's really up to the council at this point. And if we do talk about it, then I think we need to talk about the cost of repair as an alternative, and what we're really getting into. So I think it's better off that we don't address the details of the library funding, because it's not really up to the council at this point, or even the town manager at this point. It's really up to the library to take the next steps. So those are, and I would agree with all of these comments. I just wanted to put them on the table because Andy can't make it. So certainly, but the other thing is we are limited in time, so I do want to focus on a couple of issues that maybe we should try to get agreement on if we can, or agree to disagree. And those would be the models, the 4 models. Which one of those if we are going to recommend a model or not, and then what do we do about the school budget, versus with the understanding of that we need to look down the road to see whether we're kind of just kicking the can down the road, or whether the schools can come up with a plan to get cost increases within the growth of revenue. But again, not wanting to single out the schools, I think we should make that a general principle of all of the 4 major segments. So I'll open it up, Kathy.
Yeah, Bob, since you started out more generally, I'll just do a quick general reaction and then go right to my comments on the 2 areas I thought we were focusing on. First, I completely disagree with Andy on getting rid of the executive summary. The reason an executive summary needs to be here is it flags key concepts in the document so that the reader doesn't have to read everything, but any reader who wants to go on can read more down below. So I strongly urge that we keep them. Secondly, the point you made, I think, or you and Andy made, about that we should be a general principle, should we are projecting long-range costs and how it fits within revenue forecasts. I think it's easy. We say that in the document, but under what's now called general budget guidelines, all we need to do is put that sentence there. So I would encourage us to add that sentence. You know, projections should include long-range costs. I mean, we do when we get the guidelines, get a projection, but it's not clear to me that we've looked at the 4 major areas. So we can develop that concept more in the body if we need to, but we do ask for multi-year. And in the guideline, in the indicators, we're given multi-years. We just don't talk about them. So going on to what I thought was the main, I have one main small wording edit on page 6, but the 2 areas, and maybe what we should do if people are okay, the way the guideline, this draft works is the 2 big areas on where we talk about what model and how much cash capital, the 3 million, those are in the executive summary. And I want to delete both of those, and I want to suggest how to reword it in the body. So maybe we can go to the body where those appear rather than just focus on the executive summary. So it's on, I believe, if that's okay with everyone, I believe it's on page 7 of the document when we talk about the 4 building projects and the modeling.
Athena, can you scroll to page 7, please?
I can. You had said that Alicia has an hour, so I don't know if we want to do her comments first. We can, I'm happy to go to page 7, but I just wanted to check in before we get into that.
Yeah, Alicia, do you have specific comments you want to put in at this point?
I'm not sure I have like specific comments to add, just that I'm in agreement with the statement, and I'm a little bit unclear as to whether it came from Andy or yourself, Bob, in the beginning about the library funding being included in the budget guidelines. I'm feeling slightly conflicted because this is like a huge budgetary implication for us to not be providing any guidelines on it. However, I do think that we need a more in-depth conversation, and I personally was not available for the meeting where, as a finance committee, we went over the library funding, but it was also my understanding that there were a lot of other people related to the library who were not available for that meeting either. And so I'm hoping that we might be able to have a full meeting before we choose the model that we think, and that recommendation not come down with the budget guidelines. So I was hoping that would happen. And then I also just have a question about today's meeting and whether or not we are intending to go past 10 o'clock.
I know that you have a full stop or hard stop at 10 o'clock. So I wanted to try to get in everything done. I think there's one sort of public comment we may have to go back to, but I do want to finish by 10, Alicia, so that you have the opportunity to listen to things. Just so everyone knows, this isn't the last time we're going to have a discussion of the guidelines. We will send whatever we have at the end of today to the council for the meeting on the 2nd of December. And the council will get back to us with any questions or comments that they have. And then we're going to try to have a meeting on the 6th. Kathy, I know you're not going to be there for that one. But, you know, you'll have an opportunity to respond, hopefully, to the council's comments. But it won't go to the final decision until the council meeting of the 16th. So Kathy, you will have a chance to weigh in between the 6th and the 16th. It's unfortunately, you know, we're stuck. We want to get these things done this year, this calendar year. And so we're sort of stuck with having to do that. I'm going to try to also have a meeting, another meeting after the 6th, maybe on the 10th. If I don't know if you can make that, Alicia. Say it at our normal time at 2 o'clock, and see, that'll give us another chance to weigh in on the council's questions. So I know that's a lot to kind of deal with right now.
Well,
but
can we continue, because what we're doing is using up time right now.
I know. I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead. Alicia?
I just wanted to reply to your question. I would be available at 3 o'clock on the 10th.
3 o'clock. Okay.
Okay, for starters, I don't see why we have to end at 10 o'clock. If we had not shifted the meeting time to Fridays, we would have had a meeting on Tuesday. So I would like to at least, maybe we'll get through by 2, but I'd like to get to the 2 issues. And it does relate to the library funding issue too. I think it's all on page 7, where we are taking a stand in this document on which model for the 4 buildings, and I don't think we need to at all. So if we can get to that part, I'll also talk about why I think we should postpone that.
Okay,
And
so
I
you said
believe
page
that's
6.
I believe that's on page 7.
Can you scroll down, please?
Bob, if I may, I apologize for being late, but I'm present and hopefully everyone can hear me.
Thank you,
Yes, we
Bernie.
can. Thanks.
Sorry, with the screen up, I don't see everybody.
Okay, so I might be, is it on page, I'm just looking
It's
at
on
where-
page 5 or
It's
maybe
on-
6. It's the prior highlighted commented area, not this one.
It's on.
This one?
Whoops, you were just on it.
No, then down where there's an actual comment written, a comment box there.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is try to address both the library issue, where I don't think we go in on the library issue very much, but on the model. I think the model needs a lot more work in terms of the data behind it, not just what model choices we're being asked to. I looked at the 5-year capital plan, and the debt service levels that the model is carrying, the current debt service levels, and then if we look at the debt service levels, if DPW comes in, aren't modeled in the model correctly. I think they are higher debt service levels. So I'd like to get to what we've already agreed we're going to fund. And this includes a projection on the regional schools capital debt, where when I looked at the indicators, that line seemed to be not matching with what we'd seen earlier. So I think this notion of multiple years and looking at what we're talking about is really important in talking about taking on new large projects. So my recommendation would be to be silent on the model for now. Just say we recommend that this deserves a further discussion. And the Jones Library debt in particular is one that needs to be put in the model, because right now the only thing that's being carried for debt service in the Jones Library is the 15.8 million. And when we voted on the 46 million, the council, we had spreadsheets that talked about short-term interest rates and principal as when we start assuming this project moves forward. So I'm just assuming it moves forward. There were bands, bond anticipation notes with substantial interest in debt service. And we pointed out in JCPC that in the debt service projections, those bands had not yet been adjusted. Those lines, they were just carried at 50,000. And it was substantially more over a 3-year period. It was like 750,000. So those lines need to be revised. And Melissa will just have to go back and look at current and projected debt to get to as accurate. And I'm not just talking about new projects. I'm talking about existing projects that we've already taken on. DPW was in the 5-year plan coming in a year later than this model currently has it, and it was coming in at a price tag of 30 million, and now we're talking about a price tag of 35 million. So I think we need basically just a much longer discussion on the model options, because there are things in between. And this affects the other thing that appears in the executive summary, the agreement to hold us to just 3 million for everything else. I think that needs to be looked at really closely based on what we were projecting. For example, the Crocker Farm roof and HVAC system were on the projects in the first 5-year period. We have to not just be thinking about new building projects, but buildings that we already have. So my strong recommendation would be, if we leave this in at all, where it says at the November 18th, you presented, and just to say, we believe this needs more work and a longer discussion. So period. That I completely agree with choosing a site. The other question was, where does DPW go? Where does fire? I would put high emphasis and priority on going ahead and getting a plan for DPW. I mean, a design for DPW underway. That was in the 5-year plan already. DPW was on the list to move forward. So if we want to say start first with DPW, I am fine with it, but I think we need to revisit this. And that would cover, that would do, Bob, what you said Andy wanted to do, is not have a long discussion on Jones in this thing. Just, it's a call for relooking at the debt schedules and really say, what are we taking on that we know already, including the Jones 15.8 and any short term, just going back and really scrubbing those numbers, because we've already committed, Bob was on JCPC, we've committed to bringing in a communication system for fire and EMT, that we had a first year and a second year. So we've got some new debt coming on that we committed to, that's coming on in JCPC FY26. So we need to not just throw everything out, while also saying we should be moving forward, particularly on DPW. So my recommendation is delete the 3 million, delete the reference to the model in terms of a recommendation for a model right now, until we can have a further discussion. So that's my main take. I don't have any other substantive ones on the current document. I had some typo. And just why I'm pressing for, if we need to go past 10 o'clock to have more of a discussion on this, is that we didn't have time to post the meeting for yesterday. I won't be here, and I don't think the council's going to do the guidelines on Monday, Bob. I just looked at the Athena is nodding her head. I think that got pushed off, so I don't think
it's on the agenda for a discussion of the draft.
Okay, well then I strongly want to get to a draft that does not have these in them. So my recommendation is to take these out. And I don't think, the other one I have is a minor, we talk, and I'll just send it, it's more a rewording of one sentence. So I will stop there.
One thing that came up, has come up, Kathy, in particular, is the locations for the fire EMS, the current planned locations in the DPW. And the reason that it's important for us to, in these guidelines, say yay or nay that we support or we don't support them, is the current locations that are being planned are on town-owned land. So there's no purchase or leasing lands.
I agree, Bob. And so if we take the model out, we could do, I meant to say that, we could say, we agree with the recommendation, recommending citing, and we can make, that sentence is not in here at all. So I totally endorse that. We agree with that, particularly because it's on town-owned land, so we don't have to buy it. So that makes a recommendation, but I want to take the model out on when do we start on each of those? Because that's what the model is doing. You know, when do we bring in 2 major commitments? And I think we need more. I think some of the basic numbers are wrong, you know, or need updating is the other way to think of it, not wrong, for us to get a better sense on, can we start in 28? Can we start in 29? And what's the impact on other things in the pipeline? So, but yes, I'm happy with endorsing the citing.
Okay. Does anyone object to that? Councilor Haneke?
Thank you. I've had my hand up for a while.
I know, I'm sorry.
So I got a lot of comments. I disagree with removing the executive summary, so I agree with Kathy on that. I think we need one. The document is long enough that we should have one. I think we need to talk about the budget surplus section that is highlighted in gray in the document. I tried to highlight colors that tag colors in the document with colors in the executive summary, so it was easier to figure out where things needed changed. I don't actually agree with everything in gray. I put things in that budget surplus section that I listed everything people wrote. And I think we need a conversation on that. So I want to get there too. As
Okay.
for this model, I would support deleting the entire Jones Library debt, the paragraph that starts with debt service for the Jones Library project. I am fine with deleting that entire paragraph. I am fine with deleting at this point, the paragraph on the model that begins at the November 18th, 2024 meeting, or modifying it in some sense, as Kathy said, about adding a sentence, deleting the blue part, which you can't see on this draft because it's part of the pink part that has, we recommend proceeding with Model 2. So that's like the last sentence of that, and changing that sentence to something that Kathy said. I do not support putting in a recommendation regarding the locations. That is not on our agenda. That is not part of a budget guideline. That is something else that the council needs to talk about that does not belong in a budget guideline in terms of where the locations are, in my opinion. So I would not support putting those in. The next paragraph that begins the financing plan severely restricts, I think we can reword, but I do not support taking that out. I think we can say the financing plans presented severely restrict funds for other. I think we absolutely need to request a CIP, a capital improvement plan that comes from the manager this year in FY26 that shows future years that fit within these financing plans, because right now they do not. And so I think we absolutely must put in this budget guideline that the 5-year that we look to the manager to present a CIP advised by JCPC that meets those things and manages the needs within the financing plans models. We might have to modify that wording because we would be referencing multiple models, but every single model presented had a 3 million annual capital spending with a 2.5% increase every year starting in the next year. But we need to see a CIP that fits within those models. We can't continue seeing CIPs that expend 5 or 6 million in cash capital a year when the models were being presented for DPW, fire, and library financing expend 3 million in cash capital. So we need to ask in the budget guidelines that the CIPs that are brought to JCPC and the council in FY26 fit within the financing models that have been presented to us for the 3 additional major building projects. I'll stick to those comments for now. I have many other comments.
Thank you, Councilor Haneke. Bernie?
Quickly, just to speak to what I've just heard in terms of locations, locations are important because if you want to get a reasonably accurate cost estimate on the design, location is important. So even if the committee chooses not to endorse those locations, basically we should ask for designs based if they were there, because that will give us better models, better estimates. In terms of most of Kathy's comments, it's difficult to argue against having a comprehensive view of what the town's debt service will be over the next 5 to 10 years. All sources, all projects. That's a critical piece of information that needs to be updated. We don't necessarily see in Model 2, which is Model 2 is something we've talked about forever. And it can use certainly always benefit from a refresh and place it in context of other debts the town might incur.
Kathy?
Hey, I'm going to repeat what I think I heard Mandy say, because I think we're in agreement, on an edit here, which will edit the executive summary. So I believe it's delete the paragraph on debt service for the Jones Library project, delete that entire paragraph. And then change then my recommendation is we delete what is currently written at the da-da-da. But-
Kathy, can I ask you to pause and just do one at a time and tell me where?
Okay, so the paragraph that starts after FY26, debt service for the Jones Library project was authorized and is included in your projections. The recommendation was delete it, just delete the entire paragraph. So I concur with that because I added the money about the short-term debt because I just think we don't yet have a good, Bernie, what you just said, we don't yet have, like, what is 5 years, what does 10 years of debt service look like? We need to have that in front of us. And so, and then in this next paragraph, not come out saying we are choosing Model 2. I say we can focus, I'm okay with focusing on DPW, but I would delete the recommend Model 2. We recommend coming back and having a full discussion with the Finance Committee about the model along with debt predictions, you know, a rewording there rather than endorsing Model 2. And right.
Let's say an additional.
And then just the next, I'm going to wait, Mandy can react to this, but then on the third paragraph, that the next one, severely restricts, that's all true. And Mandy, when I looked at the current 5-year, it's not, this isn't quite accurate. It's that it's 3 million over and above the amount for debt service, but some of the debt service was current and projected. So we've got a 5-year plan right now that is allocating about 3 million to everything else. However, in the new project line, a new debt service line, the regional school budget's in there. There's some Crocker Farm, you know, so this isn't quite accurately worded, but I would just do use with a climate's lens. So if delete the last sign, it manages these needs within a 5-year plan, a 5 to 10-year plan. You don't need to have the 3 million in here. So I would just manage these needs within a 5-year, 5 to 10-year plan.
We might not need the 3 million, but I would say we need to mention the proposed financing plans.
Within the proposed financing, you know, it's basically if we adopt a plan, it should be able to pay for it. And we should see that. So it's take and manage these needs within whatever financing plan is adopted, is I think the way to say it. That last sentence is Athena in the third pink paragraph. And delete 3 million. See, and manage these needs within the financing plan adopted.
I'm not sure if I need to let somebody else edit this because I'm having a really hard time following where you want me to put what, Kathy.
Okay.
I think I've got it.
I can send you the changes that I've already made here, or you can tell me what exactly the words that you want me to put in here, because Kathy, no criticism intended, but you tend to say what you want to change and then continue talking and I lose track of where exactly you want me to put which words. So I need the exact words in the exact place, because you mentioned 3 million, but I know you don't just want me to take out those words.
It says managing these needs. See this sentence? Managing these needs within the financing plan, period.
Thank you.
And I think Manny wants the financing plan that does the big model, but you know, we had DPW on the 5-year radar when we looked at the last 5-year plan. We just didn't have fire station. So I think that addresses the don't adopt a model right now, come back to us and talk about it. addresses the issue of we don't have to focus on Jones here, but it's a strong message that we need a full discussion on what debt service looks like in the context of what can we do to move DPW and fire nearer to on some kind of schedule. So I'm not gonna, I'm gonna stop because I'm sure Mandy's hand is back up and she suggested going back up to surplus funds. But is there any objection to what was just done here is what I would say. I mean, I think that fixes, and then that's gonna affect the executive summary as well, because those lines just go out altogether. So I asked Athena today to put into the packet for today, but maybe we just make sure everyone has it. The 5-year capital improvement plan that was adopted, the last page of it has a debt schedule, has a 10-year debt schedule. And that's what I was focusing on, with saying, wait a minute, what I saw in the modeling plan didn't match. What I saw in the indicators didn't match. Just so we need to go back and really get our handle on what have we already committed to, and what does and it did, as I said, it had some fairly substantial expenditures for Crocker Farm and an increase in capital allocation for the regional school capital budget, which is not reflected in the indicators that we got. Those numbers were going down. So I just think that it's like this multi-year guideline idea is correct, you know, that we have to include it all. So I think that addresses this section, and I'm fine, Mandy, with you want to go back up to surplus. So I don't know. And I see
But
Melissa's hand is up.
Melissa, yeah. Melissa?
So I just want to make a clarifying comment about the models. So the models address authorized debt. So regardless of what's in the JCPC modeling, that's not authorized debt. Those commitments haven't been formally made. And that's why they're not included. And the 3 million speaks to how much extra funds we have available for either new debt service or cash capital. And like I discussed, I think with the council during the presentation, it may be that we end up financing things in the short term of those first 10 years where we have limited cash available, because it will be able to spread it out longer while our tax rate increases. And so, yes, it severely restricts, but that's the only path forward, is to figure out a plan to move forward with these big projects while still incorporating some portion. And this is what was affordable within the 10.5% in available reserves for that. And so I don't disagree at all about making the JCPC plan, concurrent with the modeling. It just did, the modeling did not take into account unauthorized debt. So just because you talked about a project in JCPC and said, maybe we'll do this in a future year, if the debt was not authorized, it was not in the projection. And the debt is not authorized to do short-term debt for the library in addition to the 15.8. Again, therefore not in the modeling. So that would have to be further authorized by the council. And those are decisions that need to be made within that $3 million limitation. So I just want to explain that the rationale behind the modeling and why and what was considered. And I don't disagree at all that, when we do the JCPC 5-year plan, that, modifications need to be made based on decisions that are being made today about how we move forward. And I want to remind the committee that the modeling does have a delayed start, but delayed, and I believe that was the third option. But there are cost implications that further limit our ability to do other projects because of escalating costs. So I just wanted to make those clarifications while you're talking about this.
Kathy?
Yeah, Melissa, I do appreciate that. The reason I flagged Jones and we're taking it out, when we authorized $46 million, we knew about the short-term interest. It was part of the financing. So we in effect finance that if the project moves forward. So I just think all of this says we have to take a close look that we've got one project that we authorized on the books in FY25 that has a second half to it in FY26. So in that context, this decision on when do these buildings start, not will they start, but when do they start is important. So I think this edit, there's a slight grammar, the proposed financing plan severely restricts, so that S should go out. We've turned it into a plural. So I don't disagree with what you've just said, but this is why I think we need more time. We can make a decision on where they go, the buildings, and we can proceed to design a DPW, and then we plug it in to, it was supposed to start in the last 5-year plan. We already had it budgeted for a piece. So I think this addresses my concern about moving too fast with these, and I'm ready to move back up to the surplus section.
Okay, I think we can do that.
Surplus is actually lower.
Or ready to go down.
It's page end of 6, maybe beginning of 7. Here we go.
So Mandy, I think you were the one who said you put everything in you got, but you weren't sure you agreed with it. So
Well, I think it's too much. And so I think we should, there's 6 bullet points here, well, I have 2 things. You know, when I drafted this, I drafted it based on, in some sense, past practice, and putting a lot of money into capital stabilization, but not saying how much of whatever needs to go into capital stabilization, right? But that's sort of past practice where that was sort of the default of anything remaining after the 5%, the 10%, the reparations, the opioid, whatever's left goes into capital. That's sort of been the default, plus some spending otherwise. And then there's these 6 bullet points of, if you're not going to put it all into capital stabilization, what should the thing be? And I think these 6 are too much. Some of them conflict with each other. Number one. And I think we should maybe have a discussion as to which ones of these are more important. I actually believe, you know, in thinking about some of this, emergent capital projects make some sense. You know, I think the one about having the CIP in June and May when it's proposed, and JCPC identifies some that if there's surplus at July 1, essentially, and November, spend it there. That makes a lot of sense. But I also think it makes a lot of sense to say, you know, maybe we put a dollar number on it, $1 million every year, given the conversation we just had about all the financing plans that are severely restricting, in some sense, the cash capital and future borrowing, and however we're going to refer to that. That maybe it makes a lot of sense that if we have surpluses at the end of the year, that we send $1 million of it to the next year's fiscal budget for capital spending to add to that cash capital amount, so that there's $4 million instead of $3 million to take on projects. Maybe we have to borrow less then. And then you're not having, as the town manager said, he tries to avoid having essentially another capital allocation session in fall. If you just say, what we expect you to do is save it and then add it to the financial indicators as a free cash line and a capital on the revenue side and a capital budget line on the expense side to supplement our cash capital and JCPC process in February and through the next fiscal year, that to me also makes a lot of sense. That if we go that route, I don't think we need public way projects, because we would potentially be adding that into the JCPC process in the spring. So we wouldn't need to redo some in the fall. We might not totally need the emergent capital projects line. We might not even need the projects that yield savings in operating costs. We might not need the funding of elementary school capital needs in an amount equivalent to the amount returned to the town from underspending their operating allocation. Like, we might just be able to go with one or two of these bullet points if we can have a good discussion as to what makes the most sense for us.
Kathy?
I agree with that. And I think that means we delete bullet 1, bullet 2, bullet 3, bullet 4. And Mandy, I don't know whether you were getting all the way down to just 1. I like the idea that, if we say after we've done the above, so we put the cannabis money in, we've done this, we've done that, we take anything else and we put it toward the coming year. We're talking about a November knowledge of surplus, of excess free cash, and we're putting it into a capital plan that we're talking about in February, start to talk about. It is for the next year. So the thing we miss is the current year, but we can always, because one of our first actions as a council was in the middle of a cycle, a bridge collapsed, and we pulled money out of reserves to pay for the bridge. So we can always do that if there's really an emergent capital issue. So I think it gets down, Mandy, I think you're getting down to just 1. If you may choose, would be we recommend allocating to next year's capital budget. Is that where you were going? Just get rid of all the others?
In a way, yeah. And potentially us discussing how much we would recommend. So maybe, we have this reparations gets X dollars. We could potentially say up to a number, or if works up, a number. But yeah, I think I was getting to just that last bullet point.
And if you did a number, we could do up to $1 million. But the issue is, we've said above, put some into the capital reserve, and we didn't say put X into the capital reserve. So not putting a number on it is probably safer than putting a number on it, because we also would like better projections, more, if we think we've under projected revenues and we get more accurate, we're going to have less surplus. That's going to be the intended consequence of doing that. But I would be fine with that. So I'm just looking toward any other reaction here.
The question I have is how does that differ from putting it in the capital stabilization fund? I mean, it's there. We can always draw it down.
The capital plan never pulls on the capital stabilization fund, Bob, unless we've voted on it.
Right,
So one year, COVID year, we pulled out of reserves 400,000, some amount of money, because we couldn't take out of the levy and not cut the schools. So one year we said we need to spend something on capital. So one could put it in capital stabilization and say we'd be willing to pull it back out again, but we haven't been pulling out of reserves recently. But Mandy's going to react, but each of those models is pulling out. Each of those models is pulling out of that $11 million we've booked so far. So going forward, if we put the model in, we'd be talking about bringing $1 million or $1.5 million in to help finance the buildings, because we're drawing down on those reserves when we start those buildings. So you're right, that it's not that different. Yeah.
Councilor Haneke?
So a couple things. This is sort of setting a policy that says keep some in free cash and use it to supplement. Don't put it into reserves. Free cash has a voting quantum of a majority. Capital stabilization has a voting quantum of 9. So this keeps it where it would have the same quantum to use as the budget as a whole. But we have in practice said capital stabilization is for those 3 now, because one's now a debt exclusion, 3 major capital projects initially. And so that would, in some sense, if you started spending that for supplementing capital budgets, you might be kind of changing an informal policy as to what we created the capital stabilization for. Not a full policy, and it's certainly usable for any capital, but we kind of, when we created it, we sort of said, this is for those the three big buildings and us getting ready for that. And so keeping it out of that and doing it this way, in a sense, recognizes those two different uses, a use of for those buildings and also to supplement a separate thing a little easier. And it, I guess those are the two things I would say as to why doing it this way, it sort of says, if it all goes into capital stabilization, there's no indication and no chance sort of in the fall to potentially have that full conversation of how much do we want to supplement before we've put it into stabilization. To me, it's just a little cleaner to do it this way with a clear, if you don't want to put it all into for the 4 building projects because maybe we don't need it, we're going to do it this way. I don't know, I'm not explaining it right. So Athena, I think with the changes you've made, it would be the next 2 bullet, to go to that, it would be the next 2 bullet points also deleted, so just leaving the last one, but it would become one sentence, so no bullet points anymore. It would become a sentence that says, we recommend, instead of the following guidelines, it would read, we recommend allocating funds to the next year's capital budget.
She moved down too far.
Yeah, that the green that is highlighted, would start, we recommend, and then going to allocating immediately, funds, which is the beginning of that last bullet point. And the rest of the lettering of that last bullet point. And it would also then need changed up above, but we can, I'm tracking the changes up in the executive summary that we're making here, so I can do that later.
By the way, Councilor Walker can stay beyond 10 o'clock, so we can move, we can go as late as we want to. Assuming that people don't need to get in a car to drive somewhere today.
But Bob, I have a hard stop at noon.
Okay, well, hopefully I've got a hard stop probably at 11ish, so certainly 11:30. So because we got to get ready for the kids to come. Tom?
Hey, Bob, I do have a hard stop. I do have to go to the airport and make a pickup. So I'm going to have to jump off.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
You can whatever, just make your comments if you want to edit the document, please do.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Is there anything else major, Bob, that people see? I have a minor wording edit, and then I did have way up your sentence about projection of long-range costs, I think can go into the general one, and I think it's already in the body of the report, but I have one minor one, and then that one that you raised when you originally spoke.
The projection one is the very last paragraph in section 4. We recommend that the 4 major budget functional areas provide a 3-year projection of operating expenses showing FY 26, 27, and 28. It is important to understand the extent of stress over more than 1 year.
So I knew we had those sentences there. So is that a recommendation that we want to pull up to the executive summary? It was my question, just copy and paste it into the executives under general.
I actually think we should make it stronger to be that, whether it's 3 years or longer, that over time they have to show that they're able to stay within the anticipated revenue growth that we have.
If we want to add the revenue growth section, I would say we delete that paragraph in section 4 and add it to section 2.
Okay.
We could do it after the as the very last paragraph. Because that would make more sense. If we delete it there and put it in as the last paragraph of section 2 after the override. And it could say something like, it is important to understand the extent of the stress over more than 1 year. Or let's see, major budget functional areas provide a 3-year projection of operating expenses showing FY 26, 27, and 28. And how they, I don't know how the wording would be, fit within a projected 3 to 4% increase yearly or something like that.
That's fine with me. I think we need, we can wordsmith it, but I think the thought is that we want to make it, the policy that these 4 budget areas should basically, the growth of their expenses should line up with the growth of revenues we need to find out when that can happen, and it should happen sooner rather than later.
So Athena, I think that means after FY 28 at the end of that sentence. It's not nicely worded, but we'll have another shot at this after the council meeting. Add a comma and then say, and how they can fit into a projected 3 to 4% yearly increase. And then we have to figure out how we want to word it in the executive summary.
I would say in a 3 or 4% yearly increase in revenue. Right. That's fine for now. I mean, we can wordsmith it, but I think it's important that we say something like that. Kathy?
Yeah, I'm fine with what we just did. I just want to point out that when we got the full indicator projections, they were projected out to FY 29. So Bob, you asked about why just this, but should it be 4 years? So it actually is projected 26, 27, 28, 29. We've been getting those, but it's really saying, this is where all of our projections are. I think I wrote the 26, 27 thought, I thought at a minimum, we ought to be able to do 3 years. I think once we get out 4 years, we're in what's the world look like 4 years from now? But in any case, the indicators have been doing
3 plus the projection.
But we're not focused on any more than FY 26. So that's what this is saying. We need to focus on the whole spectrum here.
Yeah, I think that's a question of, is FY 26 in this year's financial indicators considered a projection or the next year's budget? So what does 3-year projection mean?
Yeah. No, exactly, Mandy.
Yeah.
The entire guideline is about FY 26, right? And we're
right.
So
we could add an FY 26 through FY 29, something like that.
Yeah, I would not, whether it's 4 or 3 years is irrelevant. It's FY, from FY 26 to FY 29.
Right, that's fine. So I was just saying, we should all be staring at those numbers as well as the 1-year number, is that, everybody in putting these budgets together.
Well, I think you need the word through, or did you put a dash there, Athena?
It's hard to see, but there is a dash.
Okay. It's hard to tell when we're adding.
Say, I would also eliminate 3-year and just say a projection. That way people won't get into whether it's 3 years.
That's great. And that's That's a significant enough recommendation that it should just be copy and pasted into the executive summary under general, right? So we've,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm gonna do that.
And it would be the third sub bullet point under general budget guidelines before revenue projections. Nope, go up.
Here,
Right
Yeah.
down.
I think you start with the word for.
here.
Yeah, is where you should just start with. Oh, and we don't need the last sentence. It is important to understand the extent of stress isn't needed.
Thank you.
And I have one comment or one other thing to talk about, but Holly should probably go first.
Holly?
I just want to ask a clarifying question here. So in our projection, we project out the years past the next fiscal year's budget that we're working on. What you're asking here is that each one of the major budget areas, the library, the schools, the regional schools in the town, we just increase them by the 2.5% in the out years. So just to clarify, you are asking each one of those 4 entities every year to project a budget and how it would fit into that number? Because I just think that's going to be a bit of a hard task for everybody to put together a budget that fits into this number in 27, 28, and 29. And then next year, they're going to have to update all that to fit into 28, 29, and 30. And then the following, so you're asking them to do draft budgets and then like a 4-year draft budget on how they would fit into that number when that number's not even, it's just going to be a projected 2.5% increase on down the road. I just want to clarify if I'm understanding that properly.
I can try.
Nikki?
So the way I see it, Holly, is not do a full budget, but for example, I'll use the regional schools as an example. Last spring, the interim superintendent came in with draft future budgets that showed that even if we raised the budget by 6% last year over the year before's for every assessment, that the years after, the way they did it with level services, would need another increase of 6 or 7%. And the year after that for level services would need a 6 or 7. So the way I personally see this guideline and this bullet point is we need to know, for each functional area, how much do you think you need year over year to maintain your budget versus what we suspect might be a 3 or a 4 or 2.5. And then we need to know that difference basically so that we can, on the expense side, know how bad it is or potentially bad the upcoming years are for each of the areas. So I see it as more of kind of what the interim superintendent for the region did last year when he basically said, we have a structural deficit and it is this much, which gives us a lot of information without also giving us very specific information, but does give us a talking point on a way to have a discussion about budget stress. People might disagree with how I'm seeing it though.
But Mandy, so Holly's question, the indicators might still show this 2.5-ness, but meanwhile, there's another document that says if you're going to hold us to 2.5, we have the following problem, right? So we wouldn't ask you staff to do it. It would be the other areas. Yeah. I think that's what we're saying here, whether those words say that or not. That's the intent.
Okay, I'm trying.
Go ahead, Bernie.
Are we basically asking for 3 years of level service budgets being projected? Because that's what I'm hearing. What would your level service budget be? We've got your 26 estimate. What would you be 27, 28, 29? In that, that would then give you an indication of how much over 2.5 people departments are expected. I have a tough time with projected budgets given all the variables, and they are helpful, but are we starting from the base and then projecting what inflation will be, the impact inflation will have on those level service budgets over the next 3 years? Because that seems to me to be fairly doable in short order, but to go through and create accurate budgets over 3 years projection is a heavy lift.
I would say what Bernie said. We're looking at what's the projection based on the FY26 budget that's proposed for each of you, for each of the 4 areas. What are your projections for 7, 8, 9? Given knowledge now about inflation and health insurance and all of that. Yeah,
And
I guess that is technically level services.
Yeah, level, and
based on current inflation and stuff.
You might give people the option of saying, rather than simply replicate a level service budget each year, a level service mix each year. And this year we might want to innovate and do this, which will either add or reduce our costs, although costs never seem to go down.
Well, no, I think that's accurate. The one area that something will be different is if we can finally get out of the bidding process and award the contract to build the new school, the elementary school. We'll be down to 2 schools. And there's some operating cost savings by doing that at a minimum on utility costs, because we're offsetting the electric costs. So that's so Bernie, yeah. So a few of them, something structural might have happened that FY27 or 28 looks different. You can live within a different amount of money.
Well, that's my practice. It had been to ask department heads, to give me a projected budget for the next 2 or 3 fiscal years, and tell me what the pinch points are going to be, and then tell me where they might want to innovate, and what impact that might have on that level service budget. That's relatively simple when you have a smaller town, and the school's off on their own. So that, and the other thing is that, we're talking about schools. That assumes the 6th grade goes to the middle school, and the middle school will have to be leased, and the building's problematic. So there's going to be some challenges there as well. So I'm not willing to assume that there's operating savings anywhere going forward.
Yeah, but yeah, I do agree with you. The 6th grade was included in the cost of the elementary with the consolidation to 2 schools. I worked with Mike on the pro forma. So yeah, it didn't go away as
no, it didn't. And what we can dust off our crystal balls. We'll probably have a short period of time when we're going to see easier interest rates, and one never knows what goes on with pressure from programs and national programs for the borrowing or grant giving. So doing a level, what a level service budget would look like 3 years in advance is a relatively easy projection, and that's something we can take into account and look at. But the accuracy is going to be pretty variable, for one, and for two, my concern is, again, this anchoring phenomenon. Well, you said you would only need X million of dollars in FY27. What are you coming in at this number for? So we have to be careful doing this. It'll be useful information up to a point. Because I'm going to.
Councilor Haneke?
I wanted to talk about, I guess this is a nice place to do it. It's here on the screen now in the executive summary, but also the general guidelines, the highlighted in green part. That was sort of my compromise, I guess, on the discussion we had last Friday on how to distribute any additional revenue. You know, when we talked about potential surpluses once all the changes are made and all of that and updates are done and we know health insurance costs and, you know, our retirement costs and better state aid numbers and things like that. That green line was my compromise because we talked about, we had some disagreements on proportionally distributing, but also coming back to finance or BCG or the council to talk. I came up with the 350 number because that represents approximately 0.5% of the operating budgets as a whole. The total operating lines, I believe, I think that's what it is. On the expenditure side, the projected operating budget expenditures total is approximately 78 million, or in budget 25 it's 76 million. So the 350 is just shy of that 0.5% of that number. So that's where that dollar amount came from when in trying to give guidance of, well, if it's below raising everyone 0.5%, just raise everyone 0.5% sort of thing. But if it's above that, let's talk. But I thought we should have a discussion about that green portion.
Kathy?
I like this a lot. It's a way of sort of expediting it. And my only, if others like it, my suggestion would be to put in paren, it's a 0.005%, you know, 0.5%, because it's like where you just told me where you got 350, and you know, it's like, why not 500? Why not 200? Otherwise. So you're saying if it's not much, just go ahead and do something. If it's more than much, and you set a benchmark. So I'm comfortable with this. And maybe in the body of the text, you explain that it's 0.005.
Yeah. And it's it's the approximate equivalent of, right now the recommendation is 3% year-over-year increases. And if it goes beyond a 3.5% year-over-year increase, that's what that 350 approximately represents. So I don't know, it's not of the whole revenues, it's not of this or that. So I think it would be something like, in parentheses, another 0.5% year-over-year increase or something, something like that. I'm not sure how we'd word it, but I don't think that wording needs to be in the executive summary. That should be down below.
And just, Athena's going to hand this back to you, right? Because capital budget, a bunch of things we just deleted in the executive summary. So just reconcile body of text with thing. Okay, I see Holly's hand is up.
Holly?
So once again, I just want to clarify this one. So we do our projections on a constant basis. You know, just going to throw some examples out there. Say next week we get our health insurance rates and they come in lower than expected. Well, that's not even, you're talking increases in the revenue, or if revised projections indicate further surpluses, unless the remaining funds are more than $350,000. So I just want to clarify this to me, again, just seems like something that I just don't understand, like when and how you would want us to come back to you. I mean, when we get state aid, that could be more than a $350,000 surplus when we get our health insurance rates, maybe by some miracle they'll come in way lower. That could be more than 350. So this is something where we are constantly updating these projections. So every time we come up with a number that's more than 350, we have to stop what we're doing and go back to finance committee to see how you'd like to allocate that. I just want to understand what you're saying here, because this could be once, this could be 5 times in a year.
Paul, you wanted to weigh in on this?
Yeah, so I agree with Holly. I think this is just a really onerous sort of standard to put into the financial guidelines, which is, you know, these change all the time and we are updating it. I think that it's and it's part of the responsibility of the manager in preparing the budget to fit within the budget, within the revenue guidelines. The question for the council, I think what Councilor Haneke is trying to establish is let's make a fail-safe line that says we don't need to talk about it. We're okay with the equal distribution unless it's a lot of money or something like that. I think that's what what we're trying to achieve here. I think the number is not accurate because our projections change up and down, you know, depending on the circumstances. So I think it would just be we would never be able to meet this to come to the finance committee every time there's a change, and because things can change, and this doesn't even contemplate what could change in the region's budget in terms of their state aid. So I just find this one, I don't think we could meet this standard.
Councilor Haneke?
So it may need reworded, but the point of it is, and I might be able to come up with a better rewording, is I'll again give last year's example. I think we started financial indicators at a 3% year over year across the board in the 4 major operating budgets. And then in February, was it? Maybe March, Paul, you came in along with our finance team with good news because the retirement assessment came in flat. We can now increase that year over year to 4% across all 4 major budgets. From a 3% year over year to now we're at a 4% year over year. And I think the goal here is to say, well, if right now we're at a 3% year over year, if anything happens to the budget where you're going to want to come in, or you could come in and say, oh, we can now go to 4%, or anything above 3.5% year over year amongst the major functional areas, you should talk to finance committee before you do that, because maybe we don't want to go to 4% across all 4. Maybe we want to distribute that slightly differently. But if it's anything up to 3.5% proportionally year over year at this point, you can just do that in your budget. But if it goes above that 3.5%, given the current financial indicators of 3% year over years, you can just do that. But if it's above that, talk to us first, because it might not, then we might change our recommendation from proportionality to something else. And maybe this might need worded differently for that, but I think that's the goal here.
Paul?
Yeah, so thank you for letting me respond. So I think we actually do that. I think we came to before we did anything, we came to the finance committee and said, hey, this is an update on the information on the retirement. We think we can go 4%. And it wasn't just done unilaterally. It was done in conjunction with the discussion of the finance committee. Anytime we update this spreadsheet, we review it with the finance committee. So I think I would just say, like, standard practices to continuously update the finance committee on the budget projections, which is what we always do when we have meetings of the finance committee. So I don't think I guess what I think the real key here is proportionality, is whether, and you're saying I want to do proportionality to an extent. And then, but I think that consequence of that will be sort of, okay, open the, there's going to be everybody's going to have to come into the finance committee when you say, oh, it's 3.75% or 4%, and everybody's going to have to, you're going to ask us all to come in and argue why we should have higher percentages than anybody else. And I just think that's a really negative way to approach this.
Councilor Walker, you haven't commented much. Councilor Walker?
Sorry, I had a slight internet glitch there. Yeah, no, I agree with, even though Mandy Jo didn't give specific wording, but that explanation of what the wording could be was something that I agree with and something that I would like to see. And I don't think it's that we're going to be asking for people to be fighting for money. I think what we said was that we would do a needs assessment And whether that means we ask people to come in and present to us, I don't think that that has been determined yet. And I think that this is really important, again, considering the uncertainty of our financial future in this town and what is going to happen with all of our capital projects and what is going to happen with our federal budget and our school funding. And there are so many unknowns right now that I think, again, leaving this possible option open is going to be really important. And I do understand that you all come back to the finance committee with updates, and we love that and we appreciate all of the work that you do there. But I think that also this is asking for more than just an update. This is asking for there to be a conversation with the finance committee before that decision's made. And it doesn't mean that it's going to turn into a big thing. Like it depends on, I think, what the numbers are and what our circumstances are for any given year. So I again would encourage us not to think about this in the negative. I think what we need to do is change our thinking around this and around what the possibilities could be, because again, we can shape what this looks like.
Kathy?
Yeah, it clearly needs better wording, because we're not talking about continuously doing it. So Holly's concerned, and Paul, my memory of 4% is 4% was announced and everyone proceeded to give you a 4% budget increase. I don't think it ever came back. And I do agree that if it had come back for a discussion and some got 3 or 3.5 and others got 4.2, that there would have been an issue. But I think that's right now, if I just read through it, first it's starting with 3%. Then the second is if it turns out there's more money, for whatever reasons, expenses went down or our revenue projections are up, go first to the regional school to put that on the base. And we know that's an increase. Then and then keep OPEB at 600, which is only $50,000 less. It doesn't provide a lot. And then the fourth is if in addition to all this, there's money. So I think maybe, I'm not going to try to wordsmith it now, getting that your wording was if they're in substantial amount of money. That's what Mandy was trying to do, substantially above 3%, that we have a discussion. So, and I went back, yes, we've always done equal, but we don't have to always do unequal. And equal was not a convenience, but it was a way of addressing when 2.5 came in that we're going to be restricted. In years before, we didn't always do equal, but so maybe we can reword this in a way that doesn't have everyone wondering what we mean and make it administratively easy, that we're not doing a continuous update. Because Holly's point, Mandy, it's a combination. Revenue projections are coming in better or expenses are coming in lower. There's some mix that yields, we've got money that can be spent, and we're not saying just divert it to capital. We're saying spend it on operating budgets. So just figuring out how to create that, and it is more work to do a second round, but I think it's worth doing. And I'll stop.
Bernie?
Yeah, I think if I agree that this need to be worded better, and I also agree that staff have been, I think, very responsive in coming back to the finance committee with any kind of changes. I would be very careful, and I think we need to have an in-depth discussion about abandoning proportionality, even in the face of extra revenue, because will this then get baked into the budget of that recipient for the next fiscal year? So if someone gets 4.2%, or one of the 4 divisions gets 4.2% rather than 4, does 4.2% then become the base for the next fiscal year? And how is that going to roll along? I don't have an issue with saying we need to make an exception. I do have I do want to have a serious discussion about that, about when we make exceptions and why, and what the implications going forward are. If we're going to ask people for 3 years of projected budgets, and then we give them more money to one of the 4 divisions, that's could be problematic. That's all.
Yeah, I agree with Bernie that this is this is more complicated than it appears. I understand the sentiment, but I think we should reword it to the, to say something to the effect of, if the, this is to the town manager, if you project that we can increase the allocation beyond, I mean, this is for FY26, so beyond 3.5%, let us know and we can talk about what the implications of that are. Does that make sense? We can always change it again next year. If it's, if we're coming in at 2%, we could say if it's above 2.5% or something. Do you understand what I'm saying? Councilor Haneke?
So here's my rewording, and then it's similarly reworded down in the body. Starting with where the green highlighted is, distribute proportionately to the 4 operating budgets, unless the remaining funds to be distributed would result in more than an additional 0.5% year-over-year increase to each major functional area, at which point consult the Finance Committee regarding how best to distribute the funds. So after operating budgets, the sort of middle, Athena, the middle clause reads, unless the remaining funds to be distributed would result in more than an additional 0.5% year-over-year increase to each major functional area.
No, 3 point. Oh, okay.
Well, no, an additional 0.5.
Increase in each functional
In
area.
each major functional area. So it could be reworded more than an additional 0.5 year-over-year increase, or it could say would result in more than a 3.5% total year-over-year increase. I mean, there's 2 different ways to do it. It's which way do you want us to do it? But this is the way I did it, an additional 0.5 year-over-year increase in each major functional area, which I think is clearer than what was written beforehand.
I'm okay with this wording. Paul, are you okay with this wording? Is Paul still with us?
I think I think our team needs to talk about this, understand what the implications are.
Okay.
So I know you're going to talk about this at the council meeting and then come back. So that'll give us some time to review this.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe we should just flag this, that this is, we need to discuss this, or we need to discuss it with the staff before finalizing this or something. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, Kathy?
I have one very minor one. I can also send it in. It's on page 6. So I want to make sure no one else has a major one, but it's on page 6. Okay, let me just.
Oh, I have this off, so it might be a different page on what you're looking at. Which section is it, Kathy?
Okay, I'll just send it in. It's a sentence that says, sorry, it's a sentence that says increasing the share of capital. We actually are holding it at 10.5, which is an increase from our previous 10%. So I'll just send that in as an edit. We're not going up again. We're holding it at 10.5. So I'll find it and just send it in as an edit. Going into 2 or 3 years ago, the target was 10. And we worked really hard to get to 10, and then we went to 10.5 because of the 4 building projects. So I'll just, it's a very minor rewording. If you can find the exact line.
It's the
Yeah.
second paragraph on the page Athena's on now, the paragraph below the yellow, I believe, where it says we've committed to the 4 projects and the strategy included, the last line says, and increase the annual budget allocation for capital improvement program. Was that it, Kathy?
Yeah, it's, you know, yes. I'll just send it, I'll just send it, you know, includes a multi, so it's not in other, we're not going beyond 10.5. Is, you know, we're at 10.5. We were at 10.5 last year, so I just was, I'll just send it in as an edit. It was not wanting to have people be alarmed that we're going to go beyond 10.5.
So can we just add the words to 10.5% at the end of that second paragraph there?
Yep.
Right after capital improvement program? Because this is talking about the multi-year, what we've been doing. So I think.
Yep. Okay, my only point is it's not an increase, but that's fine. Good.
So is that Kathy? Your hand is still.
Yep, that's it. You know, I'm assuming that after this, Mandy will clean up the executive summary and we will get a clean copy with this big green highlight up at top that this needs for further discussion. And then if I see anything, I'll be able to do it. And I don't physically leave the country until Saturday, so I will be fast. And I'll just do it as a track change edit if I see anything else.
Holly?
May I just suggest a friendly edit is instead of say increase the annual budget allocation, say and maintain the annual budget allocation at 10.5%?
Holly,
Maintain?
that's exactly what I was trying
Okay.
to, thank you. Yeah, that was what I was trying to get at. We're not
Maintain,
above,
yeah. At 10.5.
and it's at, instead of 10.5, it's at that last blue, Athena, it's at. Great. Thank you, Holly.
Yeah, the only thing, Holly, your hand is still up. Okay. The only thing I'm not sure we talked about that I had suggested based on talking with Andy is you know, we want to make specific links to the town manager's goals in you know, we support initiatives that promote or whatever the town manager's goals. I'm not sure where we put that. And again, we want to reference the financial objectives and policies, which lay out the principles of how we've managed finance year to year. So again, we want to be consistent with that. I think we are. But I just want to, I think it's important to put both of those in there just so that they've been in the previous guidelines, and I think they're important to mention. Kathy?
I think removal of them got us quickly to the subject matter rather than referring. So maybe there's a quick footnote, an end note that can be put in on a adhere to financial guidelines. I'm a little worried, Bob, unless you have a specific place to put it. We've urged caution about new initiatives. We've urged caution about, we're talking about budget stress everywhere. The council has given the manager goals that in fact would, if he followed them, increase spending in a lot of different areas. So I would like to see, I'm not totally objecting to it, but I would like to see specific wording and where it would go with that concept of incentive, because we, in the very first sentence, talk about goals of climate change and a variety of other things at the very beginning. It's a nice short statement. So if you and Andy have something specific to put in, that's all I would urge, you know, that if we looked at the municipal budget, there would be any number of places we would say, shouldn't we be spending more here or more there? So I'm cautious about asking to do more in what looks to be like an extraordinarily tight budget for not just the coming year, but for several years down the road. That's all I'm saying is, wording would be useful, and Mandy may have a suggestion. I know you cut out the reference to all the financial guidelines from an introductory statement. It just took too long to get into the document. There may be a way of inserting it into an endnote.
If I may, Bob?
Yeah.
2 paragraphs before the second to last paragraph in section 4. So 2 paragraphs before section 5 starts, which section 5 is the capital budget, has the wording, "You should consider our policy goals when developing the FY26 budget with explicit reflect the goals. We urge you to make trade-offs explicit where goals conflict with available resources." It starts with, "We realize you will face challenges maintaining current services and achieving policy goals with these recommendations." So we do actually address that directly in the document. So I'm not sure what Andy is seeking or what you're seeking beyond that explicit recognition that, you're going to be challenged meeting those goals, but they are there, and you should recognize when these budget decisions meet those goals. And as for the other financial policy guidelines, I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to go back to a prior draft to see what they are. It sounded like from your initial discussion that Andy wanted it in there for maybe the 5 and 10% recognition. So I could easily add a line in there at the 5 and 10% for stabilization and free cash. But beyond that, I wasn't sure what he wanted in there, just an acknowledgement that we have them. And that a budget should comply with them in general terms.
Yeah, that's what Andy was saying specifically for that. Because it goes back. This goes back in history as to, it took several years to develop these policies, but the 5 and 10% came out of those policies. So anyway, I think it's more just an acknowledgement that that document exists, and it was, it's guided the town's finances year to year. It's guided how we manage the finances year to year. So it's really more an acknowledgement of the document, and that we need to make sure that we're following the financial objectives and policies that we've had for a long time. That's all. Does that make sense? Councilor Haneke?
Yes.
Okay. Bernie?
Yeah, I think the conflict here is that we're writing instructions to Paul for the council to hand to the manager. The manager is aware of all those, but there's also, as Andy's pointed out, an educational function to this document. So there's some need or some to educate the other readers of the document, be they the people CC'd in this or the general public, as to where this stuff comes from. And so trying to balance that out, I think creates some tension between having a tighter worded, briefer document that's instructions to the town manager versus that public information function that the document performs.
Kathy?
Later on, Mandy references 5% and 10% in stabilization fund. So we could add wordings as per our financial guidelines, and then drop in the end note that gives you a specific link to the financial guidelines, so that people don't lose the fact that we have this other document. That would be my quick way of Bernie's giving people an education that something exists, a hot link down at the bottom. Because if you go into those financial guidelines, they still say 10% per capital. So we have departed a goal of reaching 10, but that's the way I would handle a reference and making sure people are aware that these exist.
I'm okay with that. Any other comments, questions? Okay. So I did want to reopen public comment to the one person who couldn't comment. I don't see her in the attendees anymore. So unfortunately, I think we've lost that opportunity. Yes. We had some other business to deal with. I don't think we should be, gosh, I don't have it.
We had the sidewalk plow on the agenda if you want to take that up. It's on the agenda for the council meeting on Monday. If you decide not to make a recommendation today, then we'll just hold it till the next
Okay.
council meeting, up to you. And
Yeah,
then
does it-
for future agendas, finance, for those of you who haven't looked at the agenda for the council meeting on Monday, finance will have CPA, the Community Preservation Act committee made a recommendation for some spending on the track and fields at the high school. And there are a couple of other appropriations outside the budget that you'll see come to the finance committee on Monday.
Do we also want to, while we have everyone here, try and set times for the next 2 meetings in December, just because we have stuff coming up and it's been a challenge?
Yeah. So Alicia's she texted me that she can, or she said she can meet at 3 p.m. on the 10th.
She's here, so she can speak for herself too.
Right. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
But yes, that is correct, Bob.
Okay. So can we meet? I think we should meet on the 6th at 9 o'clock, which is, more or less, I think we had scheduled that as a possibility. And then I think we should meet again on the 10th, if necessary, to kind of whatever because we're going to get comments from the council, and then we're going to have to address them, and we may or may not be able to get through everything on the 6th. So let's have the 10th as another option. Does that make sense to people to try for 3 o'clock? Everybody okay with that? That would give you, Kathy, that would give you another shot at things while you're still around or here. Okay, so why don't we try to meet on, we'll try it for 3 o'clock on the 10th. And sorry.
Bob, can I ask then after that, after the next council meeting, are we meeting on Fridays? Are we meeting on Tuesdays? I'm very grateful that everyone could squeeze today's meeting in. I had thought we were meeting Tuesdays when I set my crazy trip plans. But I will be back. And so I just want to put a hold on my calendar. So I don't need people to tell me now. And I'm not intending on going out of the country again until April. So
Councilor Walker?
Thank you. I just wanted to respond because I was the one who requested the meeting change because of my schedule. I'm just unavailable at that time on Tuesdays, and I think there were other committee members who couldn't meet later on Tuesdays, or there was something. So Friday ended up being the best option, but also just a reminder that that is just through December, because in January we will have a new finance committee, and they will look at the time. So this is just temporary, and then the finance committee who will be on the finance committee for the next year, I hope you all will have another chance to look at the meeting schedule.
no, and Alicia, I'm fine with Friday. I just want to know that it is Friday. So I put it in my calendar for whatever meetings finance has to do before January.
So I think we're just, Bob, if I may, I think we're just looking at those meetings that Bob mentioned in December. And then the first meeting in January, we may need to look at scheduling on a different date because at the moment it's January 7. For that first meeting date for the new committee, we usually ask the current committee to set at least the initial meeting date so that the new committee can get started. So we'll have to just see what members are appointed once the council reorganizes in January and figure out if that date works or if we need to schedule something different. So for December, I think we're set with the dates that we have. It doesn't really make sense for the committee to meet in December after that last council meeting after December 16th.
No, I don't think so. Okay. All right. I'd like to, I don't think we have time to go through the 4 capital projects, but the presentation. If anyone has questions on that, we can certainly revisit that. I think we basically said we need to study that a little bit more. We do have minutes I'd like to adopt. Is there a motion? I'd like to see whether the November 8th and the November 15th minutes can be approved. Is there a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, let's vote on whether to approve them. I vote aye. Kathy?
Yes.
Bernie?
Agreed.
Counselor Haneke?
Aye.
No, Counselor Walker?
Yes.
Is there anybody else here? I'm not sure I'm seeing anyone else on the committee. Okay, so, all right, then it's their committee, their minutes are approved. So are there any items that we did not anticipate? Anyone want to bring anything up? We scheduled the next committee meetings. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I will, again, I'll start the vote on that. I vote aye. Kathy?
Yes.
Bernie?
Sure.
Counselor Haneke?
Aye.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.
All right, well, everyone, thank you very much for taking time out of the preparation for Thanksgiving to meet and discuss things. I think we did had a good discussion. Counselor Haneke, if you can, if you want to redo the thing, and please send it to me. I'd like to take a look at it before we send it on to the council. And I will write up a report on our discussions. I'm not going to do it today, but I'll try to get to it Friday or Saturday. So I will send it around for those who are there available, and just to get some comments. I just want to try to capture some of the discussions that we've had. All right, thanks everyone. Have a good
Happy holiday.
day. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.